The hostess smiled at me as I stepped into the restaurant, all glittering chandeliers and soft jazz. I tightened my grip on the small gift bag in my hand, a watch I knew my nephew had been eyeing for months. It was his big night. Promotion at a top firm. The family was throwing him a celebration dinner, and I'd been invited, technically. I was wearing my best navy dress. Not flashy, just nice. Appropriate. I had even curled my hair. My brother met me near the front desk. "Oh, hey," he said, like he'd just remembered I existed. "Yeah, about the table, it's full. We had to keep it tight. You know how it is." I blinked. But I thought. He cut me off with a plastic smile. "Seats are reserved for real family." He handed me a takeout box. "We asked the kitchen to prep you something. You can hang out near the lobby. It's quieter out there anyway." He patted my shoulder and turned without waiting for a response. I stood there for a full 5 seconds. Frozen. The gift bag trembled in my hand. I walked slowly to the hallway near the coat racks, sat on a bench next to a potted plant, and opened the box. Cold steak. No cutlery. No napkin. Through the glass wall I could see them. My parents. My brother and his wife. My nephew, laughing, sipping wine, raising his glass to toasts I couldn't hear. They passed around the bottle of champagne I had sent as a gift. They handed him my wrapped present. He didn't even glance toward the door. I took a bite of the dry steak with my fingers. No one came out to check on me. No one called. But about an hour later, a man in a black vest approached me with a leather folder. "Are you Ms. Anna Gray?" he asked politely. I nodded. "This is the final bill," he said, handing it over. I opened it. $2,913.78. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Because I had expected this. From the moment they excluded me, I knew what would come next. They assumed I'd do what I always did. Quietly carry the weight. Smile. Pay. Disappear. I looked up at the waiter and smiled. I don't pay for strangers. I stood, brushed crumbs off my dress, handed the bill back to him, and walked out. My name is Anna Gray, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because being excluded hurts, until you realize the price of belonging is too damn high. I've always been the helper, the fixer, the one who quietly fills in the gaps everyone else pretends not to see. It started when I was a kid. My brother, Daniel, was the golden child. Loud, charming, always in trouble, always forgiven. I was the one who got straight A's, remembered everyone's birthdays, and washed the dishes without being asked. He crashed a bike. I lent him mine. He forgot his homework. I wrote it for him. He yelled, slammed doors, cursed our parents. They called him spirited. If I so much as raised my voice, Mom narrowed her eyes and said, "Don't be ungrateful." At 12, I was helping with the groceries. At 16, I was balancing the checkbook for Mom because numbers confuse her. When I got my first job, they joked that I'd finally be useful. By the time I turned 25, I had become the unofficial family accountant, chauffeur, and emotional trash bin. They didn't ask. They expected. And I delivered, like I was desperate to be accepted. Maybe I was. When Dad got sick, I was the one who handled the paperwork. Daniel showed up once to take a selfie by his hospital bed. He posted it with the caption, "Family first. Always." He got likes. I got bills. When Daniel got married, I helped pay for the catering just to ease the burden. At the wedding, my name wasn't even mentioned in the speeches. I was seated at the back, next to a cousin they barely spoke to. My mother whispered, "It's Daniel's day. Don't take up space." And every time I thought about pulling back, about saying no, Dad would say, "You're better than that. Be the bigger person." So I was. Every single time. When I found out about the dinner for my nephew's promotion, I only heard through a second-hand comment from my aunt. "Oh, they said you might not be able to come, since you're always busy." I wasn't even invited directly, just vaguely referenced. And yet I still bought a card, still ordered an expensive bottle of champagne, still cleared my schedule and showed up, hoping this time might be different. I should have known. Because they didn't forget me. They remembered me perfectly, just not as a sister or an aunt. I was the one who pays. The one who doesn't complain. The one who picks up what they drop. It took me 33 years to see it clearly. I wasn't the family member they cherished. I was the utility they used. And when I sat in that hallway eating cold steak with my fingers, something inside me finally said, no more. I don't know what hurt more, being handed that takeout box like a dog begging at the table, or realizing they never planned to let me sit in the first place. I replayed it on the bench over and over again. The moment my brother looked me in the eye and said, seats are reserved for real family. Not, I'm sorry. Not, we overbooked. Just a smile and the kind of cold dismissal that makes your stomach twist. And the thing is, I still sat down and ate. Not because I didn't have pride, but because it was mine. I paid for that meal, just like I paid for the venue deposit, the wine, the last-minute custom cake when my nephew's girlfriend decided she didn't like the original one. When the family was planning this dinner, my brother casually texted, "Can you help us out a little? You know we're tight until next month." A little turned into $500 for the reservation, then $900 for the catering minimum, then an extra $300 when they decided to upgrade the champagne. He didn't say thank you. No one did. The most I got was, "You're good with money, Anna. You always save the day." Funny how the person who saves the day never gets invited to enjoy it. When I showed up at the restaurant, I wasn't expecting fanfare, but I was expecting a chair. Instead, I got a box and a bench. Through the frosted glass divider, I watched them cling glasses. My mother beamed at my nephew like he'd cured cancer. My father raised a toast. To legacy. To family. They used those words like confetti. Pretty. Empty. Discarded. At one point, I saw them pass around the bottle I brought. They laughed harder with each pour. And when they opened my gift, yes, the one I handpicked and wrapped, they acted like it was from them. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. They used my money, my effort, my presence, and erased me. It would have been easy to cry, but I didn't. Because somewhere between the first bite of cold steak and the sound of my own heartbeat in that silent hallway, something inside me clicked. Not anger. Not even sadness. Clarity. They hadn't just excluded me. They expected me to still pick up the tab. They assumed that no matter how invisible they made me feel, I would still pay to belong. But this time, I was done being generous to people who couldn't even make space for me at a table I paid for. The thing about being the one who always pays is, people stop seeing you as a person. You become a card swipe, a background act, a resource. But I'd learned something over the years, buried deep between the guilt trips and gaslighting. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it signs paperwork quietly. 3 weeks before the dinner, when my brother texted asking for a little help, I said sure. But I made a private call to the restaurant myself. The reservation? I put it under my name. The card on file? Mine. But I also gave them very specific instructions. Charge only the items ordered under my name. Do not include other tables, even if the group insists. And at the end of the night, please bring the final bill to me. The manager paused. Are you sure? I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Very. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was preparation. Because I knew them. I knew the family that used real family as a weapon. I knew they'd seat me outside like an afterthought, but still expect me to pick up the cost of their feast. They always did. So I let them. I let them plan the party. I let them drink the champagne I paid for. I let them order appetizers, main courses, bottles of wine, and a cake with gold leaf frosting, all while pretending I didn't exist. They wanted me invisible? Fine. But they forgot that invisible doesn't mean powerless. They assumed I was just the same Anna I'd always been. What they didn't know was, I had learned, from the weddings I funded, but wasn't photographed in, from the hospital bills I paid when no one called to say thank you, from the family vacations I helped cover, only to be seated next to the luggage. I had learned how to smile while they used me, and now I had learned how to stop. So when I walked into that restaurant with a box of receipts in my purse, and a plan already rolling. I wasn't walking in as the doormat. I was walking in as the one person in the building who knew what was coming, and they wouldn't see it until the end. When the plates were empty, the glasses drained, and the check landed not in front of them, but in my hands. Only this time I wouldn't be signing it. The dinner was winding down. Through the frosted glass, I could see them laughing. My brother leaning back in his chair like he owned the place, my nephew clinking glasses with his girlfriend, my parents nodding with pride like they'd all built something noble together. They didn't even glance at the hallway where I sat. But the waiter did. He walked toward me with that calm, polite professionalism that fine dining staff carry like armor. In his hand was the black leather bill folder, thick with itemized damage. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Gray?" I looked up. "Yes."
He handed it to me.
As requested. $2,913.78. My brother appeared seconds later, all swagger and assumption. "Hey, there you are. They brought the check to the wrong spot, but you've got it, right?" His voice was smug, casual, like he was talking to an assistant, not the sister he'd just banished to the hallway. I closed the bill folder slowly, looked up at him, and smiled. "No," I said.
Calm. Clear.
"I don't." He blinked.
What?
"I don't got it," I repeated. "I don't pay for strangers." The words didn't hit at first, but then I saw it, the shift in his face. Confusion to shock. Behind him, my mother stood from her chair. My father turned around. "Anna," my mom said sharply, stepping closer. "What is this?" I handed the folder back to the waiter. "I've paid for nothing on that bill. My instructions were clear."
She scoffed.
"You always pay." "Exactly," I said. "Always. And I'm done." My brother laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "Come on, don't make a scene." "Oh, no scene," I said, standing. "Just a receipt. One that doesn't belong to me anymore." They were still frozen in place when I walked toward the door. "Anna, wait," my dad finally called out. "We don't have our cards." I turned once. "Sounds like a family emergency," I said. "Good thing I'm not family, right?" Then I left. Outside, the night was warm and still. I could hear the beginnings of chaos inside. Voices raised, phones pulled out, blame bouncing around like a pinball machine. The family that had used me like an ATM had just been handed their first real check. And they couldn't afford it. I slid into my car, rolled down the window, and for the first time in years felt
light.
Not petty, not vengeful, just free. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about finally saying no to the people who only valued me for what I could give. They gave me a takeout box and a cold hallway. I gave them the bill. Fair if you ask me. It took less than 10 minutes for the spiral to begin. According to a cousin who messaged me the next morning, the waiter had politely returned to their table and said, "The guest of record has declined the bill. Will someone else be covering the total tonight?" There was a pause, then panic. My brother blustered first. "There must be some mistake. My sister always handles this." The waiter stood firm. She requested to be excluded from the final tab and confirmed it in writing 3 weeks ago. My mother hissed, "She's bluffing. She wouldn't humiliate us like this." But I had. And I wasn't bluffing. They all froze, realizing no one brought a wallet. Why would they? When Anna pays. My nephew's girlfriend awkwardly pulled out her phone. I can Venmo my dad." Guests began whispering. Some quietly excused themselves, murmuring about babysitters, early mornings, and I think I left something in the car. Others stayed and watched, like it was dinner theater. The manager stepped in. "Unfortunately, someone must provide a payment method. The reservation is under Ms. Gray, but she is not liable for charges not authorized by her." My brother was red-faced. "You know how much we've given her over the years?" A woman at another table muttered, "Didn't she pay for your wedding?" And just like that, the dominoes fell. My mother pulled out her phone and began dialing, hands shaking. My dad just sat there, quiet as usual, looking like he was finally realizing the silence he used to escape conflict had let the foundation rot. In the end, they split the bill across 4 different cards. The restaurant manager made them calculate it tableside. No grace. No excuses. They left no tip. And no dignity. Meanwhile, I was home. Candles lit, bath running, phone on silent. When I finally turned it back on the next morning, there were 7 missed calls from my mother, 2 voicemails from my brother, and a text from my father that simply read, "You didn't have to do that." I stared at it, then laughed. Because yes, I did. I had to do that. Because no matter how much I paid, how much I gave, how small I made myself to fit into a space they never offered, I was never going to be seen, never going to be respected, never going to be more than the wallet in the hallway. So I stopped trying. And as they sat stewing in their own entitlement, desperate to explain what happened without admitting why, I had already moved on. They threw me out of the celebration. I handed them the cost. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. The thing about cutting people off, especially family, is that it doesn't happen all at once. It starts in pieces. A conversation you don't return. A group chat you silently leave. An event you hear about but don't attend. After the dinner debacle, I didn't send a dramatic message. I didn't explain or defend. I simply withdrew. No more birthday cards. No more, "Can you just help us this once?" No more transfers labeled emergency from people who were never in mine. And the silence that followed? It wasn't punishment. It was peace. I paid off my credit cards. All of them. The money I would have spent on their dinners, gifts, and guilt-fueled obligations, I used it to renovate my small kitchen. I bought myself a new car, one that didn't shake every time I braked. I joined a local business group and eventually launched something that had lived in the back of my mind for years. A mentorship platform for women learning to say no. It was called Boundary Bank, protecting your energy and your earnings. Every week, I'd get emails from women who sounded just like me. Tired.
Drained.
Holding 100 broken relationships together with their own wallet and willpower. One woman wrote, "I've paid rent for my sister for 4 years. I can't say no. She says it's just what family does." I replied with a single sentence. Family that drains you isn't family, it's a debt. We had hundreds of sign-ups within 3 months. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who had been paying for inclusion. Then one day, I received a message from my cousin Leah. She had always been quiet at family events, but she'd seen everything. Her message simply said, "What you did. Legendary." It made me question everyone I've been letting eat off my plate. I smiled, not out of pride, but relief. I hadn't burned a bridge. I had walked off a pier they never let me stand on in the first place. And without that weight, I could finally build something real. I didn't miss the forced phone calls. I didn't miss pretending to laugh at jokes that cut too close. I didn't miss being the hero in a story where no one even knew my name. I only missed one thing. Myself. The version of me that existed before I learned to equate love with sacrifice. And now I was getting her back. One clear boundary at a time. One unpaid invoice at a time. One breath of freedom at a time. 12 months since I walked out of that restaurant. 12 months since I handed them the bill they always assumed I'd cover, literally and metaphorically. 12 months since I finally stopped trying to earn a seat at a table built on conditions. And in that time, I'd built my own. Not metaphorically. A real, wooden table. Long, handmade, smooth-edged. It sat in the center of my small but beautiful home. And one night, I invited 6 people over. Not family by blood,
but by choice. Colleagues. Friends.
One neighbor who once brought me soup when I had the flu and never expected anything back. We shared stories over roasted vegetables and wine. We passed plates. We listened, really listened. At some point, someone brought up that dinner. They'd heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. My cousin Leah had shared a few of the cleaner details. "What did your brother say when you walked out?" one of them asked. I laughed. Probably nothing useful. And then I said the thing I hadn't said out loud until that night. They made it clear I didn't belong. So I paid them back with nothing. There was a beat of silence. Then smiles. Not smug ones, soft, knowing ones. Because they understood. They had been there, too. Excluded.
Dismissed.
Expected to give more than they were ever offered. And now we were all here, sitting at a table that didn't cost us our self-worth. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the dishes were stacked neatly by the sink, I sat at the head of the table with a cup of tea and looked around. No gold-trimmed dinnerware. No champagne tower. No cold steak in a box. Just warmth.
Peace.
And presence. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Mom wants to know if you'll be coming to your nephew's graduation dinner next month. She says it's time to let things go. I didn't respond. Didn't even flinch. I turned the phone face down and took another sip of tea. Because here's the truth. They never actually asked me to let things go. They asked me to go back.
To the same seat in the hallway.
To the same role they could abuse quietly. But I wasn't going back. I had finally learned who I was without their receipts. And I liked her. The one who didn't pay for validation. The one who said no without guilt. The one who sat at a table surrounded by real love, earned, mutual, and free. Because in the end, they reserved seats for real family. So I built a new table and invited only the ones who saw me as I am, not what I could give. Turns out the best seat at the table is the one I gave myself.